Hey everybody, happy Friday, February 16th. I'm very excited to have David Green with me today. He's with Feeding Children Everywhere. Let us know that you can hear us or see us. We're kind of in a different room at a different angle today. And I want to make sure that all the camera stuff is working. But I'm very excited to have him on. He's got a great story, which we're going to all find out together since we joke about the research and development budget that I have. But I want to make sure you can hear us and see us. I see, there we go, Steve Placey's on. Let me know you can hear me and see me, Steve. I would appreciate that. And any of you who have hidden yourselves, if you can just give me a little thumbs up. Welcome, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you being on here. I'm so excited to learn more about you. I got a little bit of history, and definitely a ton about Feeding Children Everywhere. So give us your background on you. You're the parent of a newborn, a relatively newborn,
yes.
And so you've got a lot going on in your household. Hey, Rebecca, she says love them. We love you.
Love you too.
Yep, we love you too. So welcome. Give us a little background, my friend.
So I have I'm married, and I have a daughter, Emily, who turns 5 this week. So happy birthday, Emily! And also have a newborn that Meredith, who is 10 weeks old. So definitely an exciting time in our household. I have a good friend, he gave me this good saying that I love, which it's definitely a season of tired eyes and warm hearts.
Yes,
yeah.
Because I miss, even though those were exhausted times. Actually, I never really regained my sleeping habits after this, especially after my second one. But yeah, I do miss that. There's something very cool and simple about that time, even though you are 100% sleep deprived.
Right.
And you have a 5-year-old, so at least she can maybe pour her own cereal. I don't know.
That helps.
That helps, right? But it's still a lot, and you're still dealing with some new stuff, and I think that's awesome. So congratulations.
Appreciate it.
All right, so tell us about you, though. Tell us where you said you were a Florida boy.
Yeah. So born in Gainesville. Go Gators.
Go Gators! Go Gators!
Yeah. And I grew up in the Ocala area, and spent most of my life in Florida. I did live in Texas for about a year, lived in Georgia for a couple of years, but I've been back here in Florida for about 2 years after coming back from Texas. So Orlando is definitely, since about 2002, Orlando specifically has been home for most of that time.
And have you always been in nonprofits? Have you always?
I haven't.
Okay, so what did you do before? I think what's great is to figure out what you did before and then kind of give them some insight into how you got to work in the nonprofit world.
Yeah, there was always a part of me, kind of growing up and into my teens and 20s that I wanted to do something to make the world a better place. I wanted to do something. There was something inside of me that wanted to help people around me, or when I saw an injustice or heard about an injustice, wanted to do something to try to help right that. And I think for most of us, I think maybe all of us, that same thing is in there. And, career paths kind of change. For me, I also came out of a background of living in poverty, and so in my early 20s, especially, my life was all about I just didn't want to be in poverty anymore. Right? And
what does that mean, if you don't mind me asking? What does living in poverty look like? What are you specifically talking about? Again, no R&D, it's a real question.
So my family went through kind of cycles, right, growing up. So in the early years, my family was turned down for food assistance, and the food that we ate was literally food that my dad would go out to the forest in Ocala and bring home deer, right? He would hunt deer, or he would hunt turkey, or whatever he could bring home, and that was the food that we lived on in my early years. And so, when we, roll the clock forward, we got to a point where, my family was probably kind of lower middle class, and things were radically different there. Life stabilized a lot. But in my high school years, we had a very turbulent home life, and I finally reached a point where I ran away from home and lived on my own.
Wow.
And so, at 16 years old, living on your own, I lived with another 16-year-old, and for the two of us, we had no idea what we were going to do. We didn't know how we'd survive or get by. And you have to get very creative to kind of try to figure it out. But the thing that when you're going through that time, especially as a teenage, young man, for me, the thing that dominated my thought process was it's not going to be like this forever. I've got a future ahead of me. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to go make a bunch of money, and then everything's going to be fine, right? And so in my early 20s, especially early and mid 20s, my life was kind of consumed by that idea of, if I just go out and make a bunch of money, then everything will be okay.
Because that was, at that point, that's the solution you understood that would help or rectify it. That was what was actually going to bring the food to the table, would allow the home life hopefully not to be turbulent. But that was just a Band-Aid. I mean, so that's fascinating. So you had, but did you always know that you wanted to not be in the same kind of household or the same kind of situation? When we talk a lot with guests, it's like they were 4 or 5, or they were in their teens, and they realized, hey, I don't want to be like this. Right. I'm going to make the change. Because you go in 2 different paths. I mean, you can go down the same path and repeat the same mistakes, right, or you can go, I cannot possibly be like this anymore. But you had that epiphany.
Yeah, I did, and it took me a while, right? It took me a lot of kind of figuring things out for myself too. Of I know some things that I didn't want to be, but maybe I didn't quite know what I wanted to be.
Sure.
And so, in the absence of that, was a lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes in my 20s. But finally waking up one day in my late 20s, maybe around 30, waking up one day and realizing that I was really living for the wrong reasons, and the choices that I was making, I had achieved some success, worldly success in some ways, but at the same time, like, I just realized I felt empty inside, and it caused me to just wake up one day and just say, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be a different way to live that's more fulfilling, and ultimately that was the beginning of leading me to the nonprofit world. It was a big epiphany that led me to, I went to Joshua Tree National Park, which is, out in the western region of the U.S. I just had to get out of Orlando. I knew that for a few days I needed to go kind of answer some questions, and I flew out to Los Angeles, rented a car, and drove 4 hours out in the middle of the desert. Wow. And I was literally that guy. I just, get out in the national park there. I parked the car on the side of the road and just walked off into the desert, and spent the next couple of days out there in Joshua Tree National Park just, asking myself a lot of difficult questions. And, that led to me really kind of thinking about this different path that my life could be on, and a path that was less about me and more about serving others. I ultimately, from that adventure, kind of came up with the idea. I saw on the Travel Channel one day about the Pacific Crest Trail, where hikers try to hike from Mexico, the Mexico border, all the way to Canada. And it's about a 6-month adventure, 2,650 miles. Wow. From Mexico to Canada. And I basically went out there to find the answers. I got back from Joshua Tree, took a couple months to get my life kind of shut down here, gave away everything that I owned, and which was one of the most rewarding times of my entire life. That's
such a big step. We love you too. Hey, Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
That's such a huge step. So but there's something inside you that gave you that strength. Did you grow up around it? The people in your household, were they like that? Did you have a mentor? Did you have people that were speaking to you and kind of showed you a different way, or did you always just have it in you that you could make that turn and make that flip?
Yeah, I do still, I think we all have it in us, right? For me, I think that what really set it off, it was a combination of 2 things. The first part was trying everything else and coming up empty, and that was a big motivator for me to go kind of like, there's got to be more to life than this. I'd say on the other side of that, there was definitely a faith element for me, where, without saying even a single faith, but just saying like faith in general, that, for me, realizing that this world is bigger than ourselves, right? It's what's going on here in the universe is a lot bigger than Dave Green. And, and I had this choice of trying to make life about me and sort of self-serving and monetary gain and kind of worldly possessions. If I wanted to keep going down that road, though, it was just going to continue to be an empty existence. And for me, it was a combination of realizing that and then wanting something more. Wanting to pursue faith, wanting to understand like more about what are the best ways to live this life. And that's what led me to the Pacific Crest Trail.
And you did walk all 2,000?
Right.
You did? Oh my gosh.
Miles. Yeah.
I can barely walk 2,000 steps in a day, so
I'd probably struggle today. I'd probably struggle to do that. But
anybody with you, or was this just a journey all on your own?
Yeah, I actually started it by myself, and which was really good. That was healthy for me. The first 2 or 3 weeks, there was a lot of alone time hiking through the desert. And, the really interesting phenomenon that happens when you're doing something like that and you're by yourself hiking in the wilderness for long stretches of time is you think about your past. You think about things that have happened in your life. And the contrast is when you're driving down the street and the light turns red and you pause for a moment, you have that flashback to something that happened 10 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago. You think about it for a second. You think maybe I should call that person and say I'm sorry, or maybe I should call them and just try to rekindle and build that bridge and that relationship with a family member or whatever it is. But then the light turns green and you drive forward, and 10 seconds later it's out of your mind, right? Well, the difference is when you're hiking through the desert, you don't have anywhere else to go. That idea pops into your mind, and like you think about it for hours. And so what would happen is I would get to the next town and I'd go find a payphone, or I'd go find a library that had internet access, and I'd get on the computer and I'd email somebody or I'd call somebody and just say, hey, you know what, I'm really sorry for what I said 15 years ago or whatever. And the funny part about that is people they'd be like, I don't even remember that. What are you talking about?
You're right.
But it's stuff that you just it comes out, and you deal with a lot of stuff, and some of it really, really positive too. But all of that led to me really just kind of reflecting on my life and what was going to truly make a difference. And what I landed on was that if I was ever going to lead a life that was really, truly fulfilling, that my life needed to be about serving others. And whether that was in the for-profit world, the nonprofit world, government world, whatever that was, it was really about a heart change that needed to happen more than anything.
Sure.
That you can be in any of those different professions, and you can be doing it to be self-serving, or you can be doing that to serve others. And it's really more about what's in your heart. And I knew that for me, it was about a heart change that needed to happen, and that I just wanted my life to be about serving others, and that would be a much more fulfilling way to live.
Well, so you get to, which is beautiful, you get to that point. So you've had the epiphany, you make the decision. So then what? Like, I think that's what happens. Right. We were talking earlier, that's what happens with a lot of people. All right, I'm watching Dave Green. I'm loving what he's saying. I want to make a change in my life. But then you have to do the action. You have to make the change. Your heart might change, but then your actions have to reflect that. You have to figure out what that means. What's the next step? So how did you know, or what did you do next to kind of enlighten them to make that a reality in your life?
Yeah. So on the trail, the whole last month, I think you're thinking about it every day, at least in that scenario. What am I going to do next? What do I do from here? You want to make a difference, but what does that look like? How do I do that? I think that's a lot of questions that everybody has. There was a saying, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, is everybody hikes their own hike. And I think that translates into life as well. That, for some people, the thing that, really they're the most passionate about is maybe early childhood education. For others, it's hunger. For others, it's clean water in Africa, right? And everybody has their own hike, if you will. The thing that I realized when I got back is that I just needed to go look into a lot of different stuff and see what really got me fired up. And I interviewed with a lot of different nonprofits, got pretty close in the interview process to actually working for some other nonprofits, and never really quite found the right fit for a while. It actually took me a few years after getting back from the Pacific Crest Trail to really find the right cause and find the right fit. And that happened with Feeding Children Everywhere for me. And it gave me a place to plug in where my heart was really just 100% in it. And I think part of that probably comes from my own journey and struggle with hunger at different parts of my life. But also this belief in, not to be cheesy, but children are the future, right? In like a very literal way. And how we invest in children today, whether it's through nutrition, whether it's through early childhood education, how we invest in children today is going to directly impact what 20 years from now looks like in the United States, 30 years, and really, what the world looks like in 20 or 30 years. And so I see investing in children as a way to make the biggest impact for me personally.
And so tell us about Feeding Children Everywhere. You have definitely, as far as I'm concerned, especially in this community, you have gotten the word out. I mean, I don't think you can ask anybody in town who's super involved in the nonprofit world if they don't know about Feeding Children Everywhere. But how does it differentiate from, we were talking earlier, so you've got Second Harvest, you've got so many different initiatives that are trying to feed people, trying to eradicate hunger. I loved, and Activating People for a Hunger-Free World is on their website, and I loved that. So how is it different? Tell us about Feeding Children Everywhere.
Yeah, so first, all those other organizations are very important. And the way I look at it is there's kind of this ecosystem of what it takes to address hunger issues both in the United States and globally. And all of those organizations have a really good, place, a role that they fill in that equation. And any one of those organizations are great organizations. For us, we're kind of this hybrid, right? So we're not a food bank. We don't actually have a food bank that, food banks are kind of wholesalers that distribute food to the smaller food pantries that might be at a church or another local community organization. We're not a food pantry either, because people don't come directly to our building to get food either. But what we do is we're kind of an aggregator. So we work with corporate partners, we work with faith-based organizations, schools, universities, community organizations, anybody that wants to make a difference in the fight against hunger. And we mobilize their volunteers. We source ingredients. We have our own recipes. We have 3 different meals. We source our ingredients from farms here in the United States. And we put together these high impact, high energy, really fun volunteer projects where people can, in a short period of time, they can make a huge impact, package a lot of food. And then we have a whole distribution network, whether that's internationally or here in the United States. We distribute a lot of food to the food banks. Last year, we gave over 15 million meals to Feeding America food banks across the United States. We gave, probably about another 5 or 6 million through community organizations, food pantries, backpack programs, and then of course we have our Fed 40 app, which is kind of like the Blue Apron of food assistance, where people can go on the app or they can go on the website, do a simple request for help, for food assistance, and within about a business day, a box of 40 servings of our meals show up right to their front door.
Wow, so tell me about that. So I've got so many questions. The meal prep itself, so you energize people, activate people together to put the meal packages together. When I was looking at the website briefly, you had just added, I'm going to say it was Italian, so something.
The pasta meal.
Yeah, the pasta meal. So you're bringing all the ingredients together, and then you energize or activate people to come together to put the meals together for shipment as they're requested?
Yep, absolutely. So we might do a project with, say, JP Chase. They're one of our big partners. We'll work with a group of JP Chase volunteers here in Central Florida. We'll package those meals. The meals will come back to our warehouse, and then as needed, as people go online and they do request for food assistance, we distribute those meals. We ship those meals out through our Fed 40 program. And one of this, for me, one of the most special parts of the Fed 40 program is that people can actually ask for help with job skills, job training, computer skills, English as a second language. We basically recognize that for many of the people who are in need of food assistance right now, they don't want to be there still a year from now, right? They want a pathway to self-sufficiency. And so we added that feature. We built a database of hundreds of providers of these different services all throughout the United States. And so now when somebody requests help for food assistance and they say, I'd also like help with computer skills, or I'd also like help with English as a second language, we actually connect them with that service in their local area. And for me, one of the most encouraging parts of that is we're trending right now about 60%. So about 60% of the people who request food assistance are also asking for help with one of those areas that helps create self-sufficiency. And that's so encouraging to me that 6 out of 10 people, they're really actively ready to do something to get out of the situation that they're in. For many others that we serve, unfortunately, they're in a situation where it's just chronic hunger, where maybe they have a disability. We actually do serve seniors through that program. We don't turn people away based on age. So if seniors request help with food assistance, we give food to seniors as well. And there's just a certain percentage of the population that learning computer skills wouldn't necessarily move the needle. And those are the people that it's so critical that we have safety nets like this, whether that's the food banks or food pantries or what we do at Feeding Children Everywhere. It's so important that, in such an amazing, wonderful country that we live in, that we're not forgetting people like that we're not leaving people behind.
June Townsend, we love her. Mad respect for Dave and FCE. It's true. I love the concept. So that's, again, the great thing about not doing too much R&D. I love the person, and then people tell me how much they love the person, and then we bring them on and they educate you at the same time that I'm getting educated. So how does it work? Does somebody have to, the application process, is it, how are people filtered through that?
Well, part of what we were trying to do is cut out a little bit of the bureaucracy of the food assistance process. About a year and a half ago, I went through the process, the modern process, kind of, just sort of almost like undercover boss, right? And I started pretending I needed food assistance in Central Florida and calling and going through the right channels. And because I wanted to see what is a dad who just lost his job and needs food assistance, what do they actually go through,
Sure.
right? And what it showed me was there was a lot of bureaucracy. Unfortunately, because there's so much effort to try to stop people from abusing the system, it almost becomes a little mean-spirited, because people don't want to be taken advantage of. So they don't. It's like the compassion and empathy has gotten kind of removed from it all.
I agree.
And I left, like I took about a day kind of going through this process, and at the end of that day I was frustrated because of the way I'd been treated, and the lack. I actually struggled. I couldn't even get food assistance and couldn't figure it out. Like maybe a week later I might have been able to get help. And for me that was really key to showing us what we needed to fix. So with Fed 40, we have a basic application process. One of my favorite parts about it is you don't have to go to a building somewhere and fill that out.
I know that is so awesome, because people are, first of all, transportation. If
Right.
you're chronically hungry or you don't have the transportation, it's just a lot out of your day. Or what if you're working and you're trying to
Right.
make some money?
Yeah.
I agree with you. I love that. I think that's awesome. So go ahead.
It starts to restore dignity to the process, right? When you can do that in your own home. Imagine for a minute, right, that you're someone who you lost your job. Now for your family, the only way you're going to be able to provide food is if you go get food assistance. It might be the first time in your life that you've ever even gone and gotten food assistance, right? And you have to actually go to a building and you have to apply and fill out an application. Think of what you're doing for a minute. You're actually proving to someone that your life is in disarray right now, and you're trying, like,
So true.
please let me convince you that my life is in disarray and
Correct.
I desperately need food for my children, right?
You're
And
already feeling horrible.
Right, exactly.
So let's put you in a building with a whole bunch of other people that are feeling horrible, and let me try to make you realize how horrible I'm feeling. I get it. That is,
Right.
and the thing for me is that when people think about any kind of assistance, they usually think of people who they believe are way down here. The problem that I've seen is that you have a whole bunch of people in the middle that for whatever reason, they might have lost their job, so maybe it's a temporary thing. They still need assistance,
Right.
and if you can't let them maneuver through that or give them any kind of services or help, then that could make it go further down than if we just were providing them some kind of assistance no matter what
Right.
level they're at.
Yep, absolutely. And for us, one of the things, of course, we do apply, or we do have an application still. We do filter. There's still income requirements, and we try to make sure that people are on the SNAP benefit program, because the way we look at it is if let's say you are a single mom, you've got a couple children, and you're struggling to put food on the table, we'll absolutely send you a box of food, but we're also going to try to get you connected with the SNAP benefits, because we can send a box of food, but with SNAP benefits you can go to the grocery store and buy a couple of grocery carts full of food.
Right.
And so we want to make sure you're taking advantage of those benefits as well. But for us, it's really, the big thing is restoring dignity to the process. We felt like that was really, really important for the people we serve. I actually get a report every week. They send me a report of just kind of, there's a field in our application that is basically just ask, why do you need food assistance right now? And I try to read through as many of those as I can every single week. They send me the report, and the thing that stands out to me the most is kind of something you alluded to, is that hunger can happen to anybody, right? That if you go through a medical situation, you go through a job loss situation, even car accidents. There was a story I read recently of husband and wife. They're a 2-income family. The wife was in a car accident and missed an entire month of work. And this was not a family that had millions of dollars in the bank to kind of draw on during that time. So the husband sent us a message, kind of desperate, saying, "I've never requested food assistance, but I don't know what I'm going to do right now. Can you help?" Right? And we read things like that all the time, and when I read the request, the thing that really stands out to me is this is not people who are trying to take advantage of the system, right? These are people who really need assistance. These are people who are going through very real life events, and reading their stories, of course, time to time brings a tear to your eye.
Always.
When you see what people are going through, and you want to do more. In the hurricanes, when Harvey hit Texas, there was a particular one that just really stood out to me. Of course, my wife was pregnant at the time, before our daughter was born, And there was a woman who was sending a request for food assistance, and she said, I'm stranded in my house. I haven't been able to get out for days. I'm a single mom. I'm here with my daughter, and I'm also pregnant, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Please help. How can I get food, right? And, those are real people that are behind that. And I think sometimes in social media, in media in general, and sometimes for government even, because there's so much effort on trying to stop people from taking advantage, what it turns into is sort of villainizing anybody who ever asks for help.
Absolutely.
And I just think that the vast majority of people, they're real everyday people who just need help, and I believe we should be helping them.
So Miranda Katie said, shame does not help people grow into their full potential. Absolutely. And Sanjana said something about you never know what can happen, and that is so true. We did an undercover, I do some nonprofit consulting, and we did an undercover we have a task force that kind of checks some of the organizations out, not just locally, but around the country. And I did the same thing you did. I kind of went through the system. I needed help. I tried to do some applications, and every step of the way I was just met with disdain, negative feelings. I either made too much, my situation wasn't dire enough, and then once I got through the process, not a single, and I won't name these people, although I'd love to at some point, and they're big charities, not a one of them called me back, not a
Wow.
single one. And they don't know me from Adam. They had absolutely no idea. So imagine if you have finally decided, all right, I've got to put all of my ego aside, all of whatever I'm feeling, and this is life or death, or I'm feeling like I have to do this. And then you're immediately met with that shame or that disdain, and then you don't get the assistance, you don't get the call back. So what we did on that task force is once I didn't get the call back, it was supposed to come in 24 hours, it was like 3 days later. Listen, if you're waiting for food, 3 days is a long time.
Right.
So that's even to get an answer. So they didn't call back. I called back in. They had no record of me. Not a one of them. I'm talking about 4 or 5 organizations.
Wow.
Not a one had a record of me, and I had to go through the exact same process again. And all I could think about was, we're a week out. One was a power company that does a lot with the local power companies.
Right.
One was food. One was assistance with like emergency stuff like rent or other things like your power. Not a one. A week later, can you imagine? My power would have been turned off and I would have been sitting there in the dark if I had relied on them. And the situation I gave them was, I'm not destitute, but I'm here. Here's where I'm at. I suffered a job loss. Is usually what happens. There's a job loss or some sort of trauma that goes on.
Right.
And you're put in a situation that you don't expect that you're going to be put in. But I was so mortified by that I can tell you I pulled my personal support from all of those organizations and have not invited any of them on the show, just for the record, because I just found that to be so horrible. And so you're right, you're going through it, you're already feeling terrible about yourself.
Right.
And you're basically at that point where, all right, all bets are off. I have got to ask for help.
Yep.
And then you get attitude.
Right.
Get the people with attitude off those phones,
Right.
please.
Right.
Please get them off the phone. So anyway, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
I haven't told that story before, but it just, what you're saying pains me.
Yeah, it was painful for me. I mean, I'll tell one example, and it was just one of the places that I called for food assistance. I got a voice recording, and it said, and this was like a Thursday afternoon. No, sorry, Friday morning. So I called looking for food assistance. It was a place here in Orlando, in Central Florida, and I got a voice recording that said, if you're calling looking for assistance, don't leave us a message. It said, we don't take walk-ins, so don't show up in person. You can call back next week on Tuesday at this window. You can apply by phone, and then it just hangs up. It doesn't even say bye. It just says like, again, do not show up in person.
You're already down and feeling horrible and
Right.
probably hungry or afraid your power is going to be turned off, and you get that kind of response, then of course you're going to be down in the doldrums and you don't know how to pull out of it because you finally made the call, and what do you get? Absolutely no support.
Right.
And and I really do want to stress, and I'm taking over for David right now, just a little bit because it's a passion of mine. There is this entire group that we are missing as a community that is not being served. So don't think that it's not your neighbor, your cousin, your coworker. I'm telling you, they could have a full-time job and still be wondering how they're going to pay the light bill and how they're going to get food on the table.
Yeah, I mean, it's people with jobs. I mean, that's the reality over and over again as you read these. There's the requests that we read. So many of the people that do requests have jobs. And, you know, talking about Central Florida for a minute, I mean, we do live in an area with a service economy. And unfortunately, a lot of those service jobs, whether it's Disney or different companies, it's difficult to afford the cost of living here in Orlando on the wages that are actually available. And people have to figure out a way to survive, right? And they do what they can, but you know, it doesn't make someone a bad person because they have a job that isn't keeping up with inflation or isn't keeping up with kind of the cost increases here in Central Florida. Those are people that we need help, right? And if that was your neighbor and they walked over and knocked on your door and said, "Hey, listen, you know, it was a tough month for us at work, you know, and I don't have food for my kids. Will you help me?" I have to imagine most people would say, "Of course, I will help you."
Of course.
And they would give food to their neighbor. But it's kind of like when it's not your neighbor, when it's just this disconnect of like, oh, it's this ambiguous. Some people in Central Florida that need food. Unfortunately, sometimes for whatever reason, it's kind of starts to become villainized. But it's you and me. Like the people who need food assistance in Central Florida, it's really you and me. You know, we're fortunate right now I'm fortunate to not need food assistance at this point in my life, but I have before, and so I can certainly have empathy for people who need assistance now.
So share a little bit with them about what's the next step. We didn't even talk about the topic, which you came up with a great topic. We have to come back because the topic was poverty, education and poverty, and how that all melds together. I think that should be an entire discussion because I think it's so important with everything that we have going on. Poverty brings its own mental health issues, its mental health challenges. It really can and does affect your psyche and how you grow up and how you think of things, how you view the world. And so I would love to have a lengthy conversation about that, but as I told you, 30 minutes goes by so fast. But share with them. We're going to give all of Dave's contact information, everything about Feeding Children Everywhere. We'll hashtag it. We'd love for you to get involved. I love Jim McMail. He says love FCE, and Sanjana, a whole bunch of people are commenting. We'll all comment back to you. I appreciate it so much coming on and supporting Dave. But leave them with something. Either we've got an event coming up which you can talk about some, and then what can they do to get involved with Feeding Children Everywhere?
Yeah, so we do have an event coming up, the Top Golf Challenge, which is going to be a super fun golf event at Top Golf, the new Top Golf location here in town, on April 6th. You can sign up as an individual, you can sign up a group, you can be an event sponsor. The big thing is it's going to be fun, right? So it's for people like me who are not good at golf. People like me can have a blast at Top Golf. It's basically a big party. I mean, there'll be food, drinks. We rented out an entire floor at Top Golf to really make it fun. There'll be tons of prizes, things you can win. You can even, if you hit a hole in one, you can actually win a Tesla. So if anybody wants a new Tesla, it's a great thing to sign up for. But really fun event. And then, I would say, in closing, the thing that I'd really say is that one person really can make a difference. That was the thing for me, hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and coming back and looking for the right opportunities and finally finding my home at Feeding Children Everywhere. The thing that I've learned is really one person really can make a difference, and on really big issues too. And the key is we have to hike our own hike, right? We have to figure out the issues that matter to us most, and then we have to take that first step, right? And that first step might be volunteering somewhere, right? And just going to a place that is involved in the cause that you're interested in. Go volunteer at a few different organizations in that cause and find your home there, but start somewhere, put one foot in front of the other, and really truly believe, even if that first step, if you don't feel like you're making a huge difference, keep going, right? Like that's the key, is keep going, whatever that cause is. Just know that you really can make a difference. It takes time. It's not easy, right? These big, the larger, the more complicated the challenge is, the more work it takes to solve it. But real solutions are out there, and it just takes people who are committed to make a difference.
And also know that if you're out there and you're watching and you need help, reach out. Yeah. We have a lot of resources in our back pocket, and we have a ton of people that we can reach out to on your behalf. And don't go it alone. I have a lot of people that message me later and say, I'd love to get involved with stuff, but I'm going through XYZ. You know, let us know what it is. We'd love to try to help. That's what we're here for. So you are incredibly gifted. I feel so at ease and so motivated by you, Dave. I appreciate it. Humility, if you didn't feel it in the interview, you should know that is what is exuding from Dave Green. And the fact that you were able to, and we'll answer you, Sanjana, in just a minute, the fact that you were able to share your story, you have a point of reference of what it's like to be hungry. And so and Shirley felt it, I agree. And that's an amazing point of reference to have, to be able to share with other people. So I appreciate you going out on a limb. Yeah. I appreciate all of you. You guys were so involved today. Thank you so much. We love you. We're going to provide the golf tournament information, which is right up my alley if there's no golf involved and there's a quick little bar around the corner where we can raise money for such an amazing organization. Thank you, Dave, for coming. We love you guys. Happy Friday. Have a wonderful President's Day weekend. We love you. We'll be back on Tuesday. I will not be doing a show on Monday, so we'll be back on Tuesday with a whole bunch of surprises. Love you guys. Have a good one.